Thank you. The first session, there's no pressure, right? All right, so I'm going to try and set a certain context for this. When the topic came up, it was unlocking the power of tier 2 and tier 3. Indulge me for a minute. I don't think we are unlocking the power. The power was already always there, right? We just start to recognize it more over the last potentially 5, 6 years. And how many of you took the road down from Delhi? Did everyone take the new highway? Yeah? Did anyone take the old highway? You took the old highway? All right. So the thing with the old highway is that it's full of flavor. You stop at different places. There are these small roadside shops. Yeah. You know? I know where you've eaten now. But what the old highway offers you is a glimpse of how India has been functioning for the last so many years, right? There are micro industries that have been set up. There are potentially second, third generation people who are running these shops. But I have been down that highway for the last many, many years. And every time I stop at one of these dhabas, I don't have a favorite. But every time I stop at one of these dhabas, one thing I realize is that the face of the dhaba keeps changing. The way the space is set up, that changes. And today, I was riding down and I stopped. And the guy who was handing me my parantha, he says, "Sir, ye bike kaun si hai?" I didn't even have to tell him what it is. He took out his phone. He already had clicked a picture. He had WhatsApped it to his son. He said, "Because mere bete ko ek lena hai." Right? So now understand, what's happened is he's seen something, he's picked up his phone, he's clicked a picture, sent it to someone who's going to help decide how he's going to buy, what he's going to buy. And then he just wanted reviews. And every time I would say something, he would type it and send it out. That's commerce, right? And that's commerce, which is a person to person. There's a transfer of trust happening. And it's deeply unique because here you can have a conversation with someone. And that's the flavor of India, where people have always reached out to an individual, they've reached out to the community, they've reached out to people whom they trust, and basis that, commerce has been decided. If you look at how trade in India has happened, it's happened purely on the back of transfer of trust. Now, when we look at tier 2, tier 3, tier 2, tier 3 has been built on the back of that trust. Now we have tier 1. Tier 1 is no longer built on the back of trust, it's built on the back of discounts, D2C brands. Sorry, I'm one of them. It's built on the back of availability, quick delivery, you're looking at quick commerce, you're looking at loyalty, rewards, so on and so forth, right? And there's a lot of automation, there's a lot of technology that has been thrown on the tier 1 consumer. And I'm sorry I'm taking a little long, but I just want to set the context for the discussion because it's very meaningful and we have been exchanging notes for the last couple of weeks on this. And one thing that we wanted to cover today as much as possible, and maybe the panel doesn't actually allow that, and maybe there is a possibility of this going beyond the panel, is when you look at tier 2, tier 3, the entire definition of tier 2, tier 3 has changed. And the way consumers are behaving across these micro markets, these are satellite towns, these are spaces which were not even towns, which are now turned into housing societies, and there's a lot of sort of growth potential that we are seeing across these two. And when we look at what Manish and Rajeev have been building, Manish works with Yum Brands, very interesting portfolio of brands. He personally looks after Pizza Hut, right? And Rajeev has been looking at the DS Group product lines. And we wanted to speak about a couple of things. And feel free to sort of ask questions even in the middle. That's absolutely fine. I don't like this idea of sort of waiting till the end to ask a question. If you have something that's deeply interesting, feel free to stop us. We will have our thoughts gathered through, right? I'll quickly get into it, but what we intend to cover today are tier 2, tier 3 definitions, markets, media mix, what kind of platforms are being used, what is the playbook that the two of them are using, because they're very unique businesses. But one thing that's common across their businesses is the human emotion. They both in some or the other form have an interplay with food, right? So there's a very strong commonality in that emotion. So we'll try and speak about that, right? So, shall we? Awesome, all right. Let's start with the first one itself, which is the classification of tier 2 and tier 3. As I mentioned, I have seen a lot of change in that classification, but as businesses which are operating across these two markets, what do you think? Is there a way that you've started to look at a business classification which is beyond just the SEC classification, which is what the tier 2, tier 3 from an educational perspective has been done?
What I feel that classification depends on various factors. One may be population, one may be the literacy, the consumer behavior.
Yeah, it's working now.
The consumer behavior, and also the lifestyle, presence of new age mediums like modern trade, e-commerce and all that. So these are the amalgamation of various factors which classify the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. If I go by the typical AC Nielsen classification, the top 6 metros, that is Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Chennai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, they are basically the metros. Beyond that, any town above 10 lakh population, which includes primarily the state capitals and the other major towns of that particular state. For instance, if I go to Gujarat, Ahmedabad, Baroda, Surat, they all will come in tier 2. But beyond those towns, that towns like Mehsana, the towns like Junagadh, Bhavnagar, which are within the population range of 1 lakh to 10 lakh, they will be basically tier 3. But as I said, population is not the only criteria for classification of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. It's also a lot to do with the consumer behavior, consumer trending, consumer spending power, literacy, urbanization, various factors.
And sorry, just going to double click on that. As DS Group, is that the way you're classifying your business distribution also? Rajeev?
Rajeev.
So when you look at these tier 2 and tier 3, is that the same way that you're classifying your business distribution?
Yes.
Or now do you see the same kind of purchase power happening
definitely. Across? When I see the consumer behavior between Bombay and Ahmedabad, Bombay for me will be the metro town. Ahmedabad will be the tier 2 town. Okay. So there is definitely some change in the consumer behavior we see. And accordingly, we have to change our media mix, our activities, our offering. We have to do a little bit fine tuning in the different tiers of towns.
Okay. Yours is very different.
I would say, see, classification, if you look at it, I'll obviously what Rajeev has said is right. But our realization in the last couple of years has been that whether you go to tier 2, tier 3, even tier 4, at least from my category, which is food, and I have spent about 8 years in QSR now, there is no significant change that you will see in terms of what it would mean, right? And being a Western food brand, we obviously started with a metro heavy presence. So just a couple of years back, we were almost 70% sales coming from the top 7, top 8 metros. But today that number is not like that. Now almost like 50% sales come from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, whatever, whichever you call it. But we call it as emerging, right? Our definition is top 8 metros and emerging. Emerging is the new possibilities that we are going on. And in the last couple of years, we have seen rapid expansion, rapid acceleration, and as we progress into the conversation, you will hear some interesting nuggets, and those have been quite a revelation in terms of users' ability to connect with the brand and how they perceive each brand in a different metro versus an emerging market.
You, of course, have 3 different chains. I know that you look after Pizza Hut, but you have 2 more chains. Is there a way that you look at a distribution approach which is extremely different for all 3 of them across these markets?
See,
especially with a focus on media, if you can.
Sure. So between KFC and Pizza Hut, which are on the similar close to 1,000 restaurants presence, plus minus 100 restaurants here and there, Taco Bell is one which is trying to make its foothold. Started, didn't found the right business model, didn't find the right appeal, but they are now growing rapidly. Now they are close to about 135 restaurants, right? But considering that is the first 135, it is largely in metros and all that, right? As they progress more towards 200, 250 plus, they will start their expansion into more of tier 2s and tier 3s. Because unless until you get that confidence on a humming business model in metros, it is always a little difficult to move to smaller towns, right? And also from media synergies perspective, it makes sense to concentrate your spends into a couple of cities rather than spreading too thin across too many markets. So that is also one of the play that plays out in expansion strategy.
Rajeev, what about you? Do you have a media mix preference, which is different across? So does your tier 2 media mix and a tier 3 media mix, especially with a focus on online, do anything?
I tell you, like we have most of the FMCG brands, which includes Pulse Candy, Catch, Pass, Silver Pulse. In all these brands, the major media still is TV. considering that very wide reach and impact. Although I understand that digital is growing very fast, and the digital industry, as per the last report, has crossed the TV industry now. It's almost 34,000 crore is the digital industry and 32,000 TV industry. Because of that, so many players have come in which are only on digital, and still, but for the mainline brands, Pass, Pulse, Catch, and all that, TV is still the medium. But what we are doing, we are layering TV a lot with the digital, shifting some budget from TV and press to digital now, which helps us in specific targeting in terms of town-wise, TG-wise, in pin code-wise. Because all the towns will not be equally important for me. The towns which are P1, P2 towns, that we layer TV with the digital in those markets. Apart from that, we are using influencers quite a lot. What we have seen, particularly in Tier 3 and Tier 2 towns, there are local level of influencers, which are not the macro influencers, which are more the micro and nano influencers, that they are playing very important role. Suppose in a town like Bareilly, if there is some micro influencer, the relatability of that influencer will be much higher than a big time macro influencer, because he knows the language of that particular town, he knows the consumer behavior, he knows the narrative, the likes, dislikes, and the kind of content which he should deliver. So the consumer's trust factor builds a lot in those kind of influencers. So in the nutshell, that overall mix it will be like TV plus digital plus influencer plus local levels events also. Like now the festival season is coming, so there will be a lot of Dandiya, Navratri, Ganesh Chaturthi, these kind of festivals happen, in which also we see a lot more attraction in the Tier 2, Tier 3 towns. So that also help a lot. So this in the nutshell, that because TV I cannot bifurcate in the different towns. Complete HSM market I have to take anyway. But through digital influencers, local event, I have been able to do extra focus in Tier 2 and Tier 3 towns. So that's why the budget definitely has been shifting from more from TV and print to these kind of mediums.
Does IPL feature? Does IPL feature for you?
IPL?
Yeah.
No, not really right now. It's too big an investment. So in fact, I was just building on Rajeev's point. See, if I look at Pizza Hut's journey last couple of years, the way we have expanded, 4 years back, digital only was making sense for us because we were 70% of business was in top 7 metros. It was easy to concentrate with media layering on digital, good passion points, look at right affinity media, build a very consistent audience-based strategy, which would be the right cohorts, right? But as we are expanding, now we are on 230 plus cities, digital will have a much higher cost per reach versus going on TV. So this year we have deliberately switched to TV, and it has been after 4 years that Pizza Hut done that, to come back on TV, just from the objective that with that high number of cities to be covered, digital was not becoming very efficient. But I'd say it's a learning phase that we are going through. We'll see how it progresses for us.
So that's interesting, because you went digital,
Yep.
you have come back to TV because the cost of digital was higher, because you were not able to sharply segment it as you wanted.
Correct. And the way
I think there'll be a lot of people who could potentially solve this for you.
Yeah. So like what I mentioned.
Now you guys know what to reach out to.
So the emerging markets especially was not responding to digital that much. So we felt that TV could be the solution for us.
That's actually super interesting. The emerging markets, as far as whatever little I have seen, and this is also on the point that Rajeev mentioned, it works on the back of these very small communities and very sharply defined communities which go through. And, you know, I don't know how many of you have been on a Telegram group. Are you on Telegram groups, WhatsApp community groups? Anyone? Right? Man, they're like massive businesses which are running on WhatsApp and Telegrams. Right? It's crazy the scale of these businesses. Right? There are Telegram groups where there are, you know, potentially we are looking at lakhs of members, and all it takes is one person putting one code with one product picture, and it just moves. Right? And all of this is happening across Tier 2 and Tier 3, and I'm not very fond of the classification, but yeah, happening across emerging markets, that's potentially a better thing. And I think the shift of media investments, which is far more trackable, it's far more attributable, but it's also happening in a closed sort of walled garden, which is the Telegram group and the WhatsApp community. These are things that could potentially help brands scale up in these markets, right? Which goes beyond just the media distribution and buying a GC or essentially just using your YouTube as a distribution methodology, right? So coming to you. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
You made a very interesting statement where you said for the emerging markets, the digital was not working out very well. So you thought TV could be potential one. How did that work out? Because attribution is hard in TV.
So, like I mentioned, it is an experimentative phase for us. This is the year then we took that call. We have done 2 campaigns, still a journey. And the last couple of months has not been a great macro, so difficult to comment on that.
What are you tracking?
Sorry?
From TV, what will you track?
Direct sales,
Okay.
no intermediary
But
measures,
the long tail impact of it, no?
long tail impact of it.
Which you could not do with digital?
See, digital, like I'm sure everyone would do, 600 million plus audience population, right? But how many of those have experienced Western food brands? How many of them are interested in that? So even when we were doing the top metro strategy with digital, it was a very, very clear audience-based strategy. We are not going to that large mass population. We are not in a category creation job. Pizza as a category exists in India for 25 years. This is the 26th year running for Pizza Hut in India. So it is not a category creation job that I can go to any audience. So we are very sharply targeted on people who have interest in food. We were only chasing those. So out of 600 million, we were about 32 million audience that had interest in food in top 7 metros. So we were that sharply targeted and we are getting good reaps on yields, right? But as we progressed to emerging markets, there was not such a large audience pool available who had already shown interest for food brands. That was our challenge.
I have a point to add in over here, what Manish said. What we also observe, that TV being the large screen, that impact of any communication is slightly higher vis-a-vis the small screen of mobile, in fact. In digital, while the benefit is definitely we can do much more sharper targeting, which we cannot do on television. And digital can be a two-way communication, which cannot be possible on TV. But at the same time, the plus of TV, what we have seen is a much larger impact and sensorial experience. That what is the ultimate objective of the brand communication? The consumer should engage with your brand, he should love your brand, he should have created the affinity for your brand, in fact. So we have seen that between TV and digital. So the solution what we are finding now is in form of CTV. Because CTV is providing us both. It's providing us impact as well as it's providing us the specific targeting audience also.
Anyone here who's also CTV? There we have. I'm going to use the next 2 questions to just quickly talk about what you just mentioned, the technology advancements that you see helping your business. And the next one, we'll just speak a little bit about the consumer data pieces, right? And whatever order. But if you see technology and especially some degree of predictive consumer analysis, you are building very deep cohorts. Yours is a little bit more sort of wider distributed because you have multiple product portfolios, especially a large scale FMCG has wide scale portfolios. Just give us a sense of the kind of technology stack that you guys use and what are you building, especially when it comes down to attribution and potential retention as you go through.
So like in a food brand, there are the 3 key pillars, right? And the way we call it is, and I'll focus on 2 of those. One, that you will get a good or great food only when the people who in the store are serving you are happy, are able to do their job efficiently, right? So it's a huge focus on automation, efficiency built in the back of house, as we call it, it's called team member experience. So how do we drive TMX and how do we drive CX, customer experience? So these are the 2 key pillars on which the QSR brands are building their tech stack. So driving efficiency, delivery management solution, kitchen management system, which helps the team to do their job efficiently and faster, so that there are lesser wastages and all that. So it also leads to your bottom line and bottom of the P&L improvements. So that's one part on which the key focus on tech stack is. If I look at it from the consumer facing side of it, it is all about building audience know-how so that I know you better, I connect you better, I serve you better. So things like enhanced CRM, CDP capabilities, building on the loyalty points, right? So these are some of the things that we are trying to look at. And like I also mentioned that a large part of our strategy on digital has been very sharply targeted, audience-based, cohorts-based, personalization, contextualization of the moment, That's what has worked. And like what Rajeev was saying, right? Digital just having a plain banner doesn't always work versus a TV, which is much more immersive media. It's audio visual. It's a storytelling. Humans connect with story. There needs to be emotion. And at many times those digital banners are void of any emotion. Those are like, here's the banner, here's the discount, buy it, right? It doesn't connect with the brand. It doesn't build memory structures. It doesn't build hook for the brand to be anchored in the consumer's mind space, right? So from that perspective, in our digital campaigns, the strategy was always very clear. It is audience into the cohort, into the moment, into the contextualization of the moment.
Yeah, basically in our case, there are the two major objectives. One is that creating brand awareness and brand consideration, and other is the direct conversion. For brand affinity and creating brand consideration, we have been doing a lot of research in terms of brand track, brand health, and also marketing mix modeling. Marketing mix modeling gives us the holistic perspective that which are the different medias like which are working for us, which are the whether trade schemes working for us, whether it's TV or digital, what is working for us. To some, although none of them, what we have seen, is without flaws or without minus points. But that gives us some perspective. Apart from that, in the online direct, D2C platform, the conversion where is the objective. So we still, so far we have been doing basically the attribution modeling in terms of last click. But now we have implemented GA4. GA4 is slightly more holistic, which is giving analysis. Although so far we haven't started getting that, but it's in the process of implementation and learning that which are the different consumer touch points which have been leading to the consideration and the final sales, in fact. Apart from that, we also do the brand lift, search lift studies also. As I said in my previous talk also, that the objective is that brand communication, whatever I've been doing, that how much I've been able to convert the consumers, like brand, if I see the funnel, brand awareness, brand consideration, and final conversion. So the GA4 can give more detailed analysis of the different touch points and the different objectives, which so far we have been doing on the last click modeling.
All right. So very quickly, right? We'll just move into the consumer side of this, consumer data side of it. You have first party data. People are walking into your store, they're buying things, assuming there's a lot of richness of data there. You, on the other hand, potentially don't have that richness, which is the person who's coming and buying a pulse candy at the ground level. I don't know, I'm asking you. What is the level of data that you guys have that helps you take better marketing decisions, and how do you get that?
See, in our category, it is quite easy because consumer is, every touch point is possibly a touch point that is much more a controlled environment, bearing, I would say, a little bit on the marketplace, where it is a gray area. But largely, whether consumer will walk into the store, will order from website, app, or you maybe or food aggregators, right? So in most of the cases, since we have the data, we know the consumer what it is basket was. So we do run a lot of deep customer analytics on that. So building basket analysis, looking at audience movement, building them into different kind of cohorts, profiling, segmentations. One thing that we lack in QSR is, so data for us is mobile number. We don't know what age it is, what gender it is, what income group it was. We don't know that. We just know that this mobile number consumed this many number of pizzas, garlic bread, sides, etc. So that's an interesting opportunity for brands like us who have just mobile number as consumer. How can we do data enrichment? And I know there are data enrichment partners. We can help you with that.
Is there any way to do it where you just have one identifier, which is a mobile number? Yeah? Do you want to speak about that? Okay. I'm just using this as an opportunity to expand this.
So, yeah, based on few attributes, it is possible to figure out. Just I'll give one example in this room. 85% female name end with a vowel. Okay. So you can just imagine any male name with vowel, you will find very less. So algorithms can be that simple also to figure out a gender by the name.
And if you have just a whole set of phone numbers with you, you can build identifiers.
We can build identifiers. There are algorithms.
That's very cool.
Sorry,
Yeah.
we are also starting to do something like this because as parents we keep getting this feedback that you understand the age, the gender, where do they spend, what income segment and everything. So we are actually building a product that allows users to also tell brands about themselves, and then it's a much more consent-based flow where no privacy guardrails are broken,
Yeah.
and yet the users also understand how they're sharing.
And the data goes back directly to the brand?
Yes.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
that's interesting.
That's very, very, very interesting.
Because privacy is one thing which kind of puts that barrier to even attempt doing something like that.
Listen, we anyways need first-party data, okay? And, I'm going to be very honest. India doesn't have a problem of data. We have a problem of dirty data, right? So we have way too much data, and most of it just absolutely makes no sense. So when you start to break it down, you realize that you spend a whole bunch of time, effort, money on building out your entire CDP, which, by the way, takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And then you start to model things base your CDP, and then you realize the amount of dirty data that you have, which is absolutely non-usable. So if that can be solved for, then yeah, wonderful. Okay, we are kind of running out of time, so I'm going to get into some quick rapid fire and then open it up, okay? You guys have already spoken about this. My question to you was top media vehicles for your brands. Have you already spoken about the top media vehicles?
I can do a little bit
Yeah.
more detailing on that.
Yeah.
So one
Quickly.
that I already talked about, that TV versus digital, how it has been playing out, right? And also a little bit talked about how the contextualization and having the right communication is important. And what I have seen is a lot of times we are tempted, oh, let's look at this big impact, sponsorship and all that. That I have not seen every time playing, and not just, I'm not talking about my brand, I'm talking about experience with other peers. Generally, these big impact sponsorship deals are always not the ones that work for you the best, right? So there I would rather be little cautious. And I'll give another example on a journey to try to create impact. You go to Google, they will say, oh, you take YouTube mastheads and all that, right? And really burn money in the first 3 days to create instant reach and then play you down. And we do our media modeling, and that was a very bad ROS on YouTube masthead. The media modeling agency's recommendation was you rather burn it on every day, because in our category it is impulse category. Food could be sold every moment, and if you are top of mind, it could be sold this Sunday, next Sunday, this Wednesday, this dinner, that lunch. So rather than spending money at one go, because we are not in a category creation job. It's not that my awareness is not there. If you look at about any QSR brand right now, KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, all are 80%, 90% awareness. It's all about whether I'm considering you for this food occasion or not. So it makes sense for our category to be more salient across the time, rather than creating those spikes. And it may differ for some of you brands. Some of the newcomer brands may need that spike, may need that instant reach boost. But for our category, what I've understood is a larger constant play is much better.
Speaking of new brands, to you, sir, young brands who aspire to go offline, right? Complete this sentence. Young brands who want to go offline, what should they do? A lot of digital brands in the room. A lot of digital brands who potentially want to open, maybe their EBO, maybe they want to go into MT, maybe they want to have some amount of GT distribution. No one better than you.
Young brand, offline, you talk in terms of media?
Anything. So overall, if there's a new, young, emerging brand in this room, and there's so many of them, if they want to go into a GT market, if they want to go into an MT distribution, then what are the things that they should be doing? Because I mean, that's really something that you handle very, very closely with DS Group.
You see, DS Group model and young brand model is very, very different.
No, not young brands, I'm saying younger brands,
Younger,
new
sorry.
brands.
Okay. See, omni-channel is working a lot these days, in fact. There are the studies that consumers who have been interacting with the consumer on offline and on the traditional channel, modern trade as an e-commerce, their purchase is almost 2 times more than the consumers who have been present only on one channel. Because what happens that when we go on e-commerce, we end up buying so many other things which we otherwise don't intend to buy. Particularly in cosmetics, fashion, this kind of industry, that even if it is not the basic need of mine, but when I see the products on the e-com platform, I get into the mode of experimentation. In fact, as per one study that last year that 20% of this purchase of the e-commerce were of such products which were not the usual purchase products of the consumer.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
I have a lot of those things.
Yeah. So, and as such also the data which is coming that as the overall retail industry, that FMCG particularly, that e-commerce so far is contributing just 4 to 5%, and by 2025 it should be 7, and by 2030 it should be around 10%. So that's why e-commerce, I will just suggest everyone that omni-channel strategy is very, very important. Number two, a lot of personalization and customization is playing very, very important role. Even in the towns like tier 2, tier 3, because the consumers have been exposed too much to the OTT and the YouTube and so many new age platforms, that, and also that disposable incomes also they are rising. That in India, that currently the middle class is around 61%, which should go to 78% in the next few years. Disposable income is high, aspiration levels are high, exposure to the new age mediums is high. So that's why the people are, even in tier 2, tier 3, people are buying more and more products which were so far restricted to more of the metro or semi-metro kind of towns in fact. So understanding the consumers in more detail, not only in terms of demography and psychography, rather also in terms of attitudinal shift, that is very important. And any brand, they have to study consumer more in terms of micro segmentation and more advanced segmentation in fact. Because as I said, consumer is highly fragmented in all kind of towns. Number 4, that local flavors is very important. Because of the small towns, that India is not the, like, it's a vast country which has very different kind of town, different kind of culture, different kind of classification. Understanding the local flavors is very, very important. And communication in the local language is very important. Consumers are able to relate more with the brand which speak in their language. Vernacular, video and voice, I think these are the 3 things which are working a lot in, particularly in the tier 2, tier 3 towns. And as I earlier said, influencers playing very, very important role in communication. So in terms of placement, that omni-channel, in terms of product, that localization, local flavors, in terms of communication vehicles, influencers playing very important role, and also that in particularly consumers in tier 2, tier 3, they are highly value conscious. One of the reasons for growing e-commerce is that also they compare lots of products, their features, their prices, and then they end up buying the product where they feel that they are giving them value for money. So they are highly value conscious customers. These are the few of the points.
I have an interesting take on the last statement he made, that emerging consumers are value conscious. I have seen it very different way, right? And I'll again call it out. It's a category play. You will have to think about your brands and see where does the role of brand fits for that users. So metro, we are double income family groups, right? Both husband and wife working. So obviously our eating out are much more frequent, or delivery situations are much higher. So we are not always looking for, or even the exposure or repertoire from the fast casual or the really fine dining is quite high, right? So we look at some of the QSR brands, our fast food brands, are quick, convenient, easy, reliable, my comfort food choice, right? So it is not my go-to destination when I want to celebrate a special moment. But in emerging towns, this set of brands, which is a very fast, important, convenient, quick, reliable, comfort food, changes into something a destination brand. Because there are not so many places where they can go and celebrate or have a good fine dining experience or a good moment, right? And we have seen that in emerging cities, people spend more, people go for more premium products, while in metros, because it's a large part of migrant population, they are always seeking value. The large part of youth, colleges, BPO, working class, they are looking for value more. So it's quite interesting play, category to category, it may vary.
I agree. I'm just going to segue very quickly into heads or tails. We see a higher ticket purchase happening in most tier 2 markets as compared to tier 1. That's also primarily because I think tier 2 have larger homes, they have more dogs, more cats. Just disposable income is a little higher, but I completely understand that it changes from a commoditized piece to a highly aspirational piece, and that's when the ability to spend or the need to spend goes up. So it's a very category dependent thing.
One thing I would like to add, customer is not only cost conscious, they are value conscious.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true.
I will give small example of our own brand, sorry, Pulse Candy. When we launched the candy, 85% of the market was at 50 paisa. And our only objective was that we had to give some differentiating product, and we were not able to give that differentiating product in the less than 1 rupees. Still we took the chance. And that candy, 1 rupee candy, against the 85% of the industry which are at 50 paisa category, Pulse became #1 candy in fact of the country. Because we provided the consumer the value in fact. So the insight is consumer is not cost conscious, they are value conscious.
Fabulous point. It's not just about the cost, right? All right, I'm going to stop and open it up for questions. We have about 5 minutes. So I can take about 2 questions. Does anyone want to go? Any questions from the room? There we are. Yeah. We can hear you, but I think yeah.
Yeah, hi. Audible?
Maybe
Yeah,
for the
okay.
backbenchers
Yeah,
sort of a thing.
sure. So on the last point you mentioned, of course, tier 2 cities, bigger homes, more pets, etc. So higher ticket value. Also, do you feel its accessibility of the products also plays an important role?
I'm reflecting this on my stores. I have stores across different regions. So my store UPT, which is the unique products per transaction as well as the average order value, is a little more in the tier 2 side. Okay. But it potentially does boil down to accessibility to a certain extent. But having said that, we've also seen less friction. Just genuinely less friction when someone walks into a store. You know, this is reality, okay? We are all tier 1 folks. Everyone knows someone and everyone wants a discount.
Correct.
Everyone feels as absolutely entitled. So the privileged lot who are there in the tier 1, including us, when we walk into a store or when we are in an e-commerce, we know we were going to add something to a cart. We're going to bugger off. Thode der mein mere paas wo abandoned cart ka coupon aa jayega. Or I'll walk into a store and I'm going to say, you know, I know this person, give me a friends and family discount. That's how tier 1 is operating, which is across D2C. I mean, it's not just unique to us, right? It's across D2C, where tier 1 has been able to figure out this entire gamification piece where it's either a person-to-person gamification or it's a systemic gamification. Whereas tier 2 or, you know, the emerging markets, they're just at this moment discovering a new way to buy. And I think that's really where the lack of friction or just the ability to buy something very sort of at face value exists. But that's just us.
No,
I could be wrong.
Good point.
But thank you. That's a good question.
In fact, I know there are some folks from Tata, and I recently read that Judio, I think, has the highest grossing store in somewhere in New Jalpaiguri or somewhere. They are the highest grossing store for Tata. So I don't know whether the number is right or wrong. I have read it somewhere, but that also reflects that some of these emerging markets which also had some kind of pent-up demand, they are kind of now having get access to that, they are willing to put that money out.
Northeast is another fantastic market. Yeah. I think the Northeast market is absolutely flush with money, extremely underserved, very high real estate space as well as, you know, they're extremely comfortable with the delay of orders reaching them. So look at I mean, the marker here is if there is a state or a territory where unko pata hai ki product late pahunchega, then potentially it's a good thing for a D2C brand, you're going to have lesser RTOs. So when you look at unit economics, it just makes a little bit more sense from that perspective. So yeah, Northeast, you have, what was the other market you mentioned?
New Jalpaiguri.
New Jalpaiguri, yeah, so around the
around
eastern side of it, yeah. Cool.
Last
there
2
we have,
minutes. Yeah.
oh, fantastic, lots of questions. Sorry, after this we'll give the mic there.
Quite a few hands.
Quite a few hands.
So when we talk about you know, unlocking the growth of or the potential of tier 2 and tier 3, there are 2 parts to it. One is creating the demand and the other is serving the demand, right? As a marketer, we know there are various options to create the demand, and with the rise of influencers and just platforms like, you know, MX players, which goes really local in creating demand, what I feel is that there is a challenge in serving the demand. And the scale you will only be able to unlock when you are serving the demand right next door, right? And there are various options. So which one do you think basis your experience, is the most cost effective? Direct servicing, super stockist, or through wholesale only, or maybe any other route which can be a cost effective way of serving the demand?
I would assume it's a little bit product dependent, but I'll
Yeah, I think
request
Rajeev will be the right
Rajeev
person
to answer that.
in the distribution game.
See, as I said that e-commerce is playing very important role in unlocking that kind of demand, because e-commerce addresses the issue of the distribution also. E-commerce also addresses the issue of that consumer has the access to variety of products which may or may not be his usual purchase. That certain demand, which is a latent demand in fact, the e-commerce is addressing that issue also. And connectivity, logistics have improved a lot in tier 2, tier 3 town. And many e-commerce players, including Flipkart and all, they have done a lot of tie-ups with the local stores for the easy distribution of the products. Even they went up to even 1 lakh kind of retail outlets in terms of tying up, so that the consumer get these products in time.
If I just may add, I used to work in Bombay Shaving Company before this, and we essentially were distributing products across. The super stockist model actually does interplay very well, but there are two caveats to the super stockist model. One is that you have to have a very strong sort of cash in first, and that's always going to be a challenge when you look at serving demand at retail, especially when you look at an emerging market. So my suggestion is wherever you get money up front, that's one thing that you should optimize for. You need cash in the bank more than stock out there, but it totally depends on how risk averse you are towards inventory. The second model that we have seen work well is having extremely localized distributors with deep incentives who are also connected to the dealerships. So a lot of these distributors have actually co-ownership in dealerships. So, and that's actually a central model that one could look at where you're looking at a GT expansion. For MT, unfortunately, we're still paying for shelf space. So,
in fact, a lot of companies, they appoint distributor only for tier 2, tier 3, or maybe for the rural hinterland area separately.
Yeah.
Who does that only working in the area where the direct distribution is not happening effectively.
All right. I hope we were able to address some of it. Okay. There were questions there at the back. Shiny, how much time do we have? It says time's up. Okay. Give us 5. Thank you. Come back
Hello.
to you also.
Hello Rajeev, so my question is for you. DS Group, the most of the customer is not the end customer. You deliver to the...
So sorry, can't hear you very well.
Is it better?
Yeah, can you just be a little louder?
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Is it better?
This is better. This is good. Yeah.
Okay, great. So Rajeev, for DS Group, be it Pass, Pearls or anything, the end customer is not the direct customer you are selling to. You are selling to wholesalers, stockists and distributors. Okay. Like in the conversation you mentioned that 10% of, you are expecting 10% of e-commerce share in coming years. Is it to the direct customers you are expecting, or the wholesaler, you are expecting the wholesaler to come to your website and buy Pass in bulk?
No, when I say e-commerce, that's a D2C, that's a direct to consumers.
Not for DS Group, it's overall market you are suggesting that?
Overall, the projections are in FMCG that 10% contribution will come from e-commerce.
And that would be directly to the customers or
directly to consumers, yeah.
So consumers will directly buy Pass and Pearls and everything in bulk?
Exactly.
Not in consumption.
Not in bulk. Even right now, most of the FMCG companies, they have D2C platform, including ITC, Nestle, Dabur, HUL, even DS Group. We already have D2C platform. But so far, the contribution is minimalistic, maybe 1%, 2%, 3% in the different company, different product category. But since the trend is catching up, more and more people are shifting to e-commerce. By 2030, the projections of the various analysts are that it should contribute around 10%. That is direct purchase by consumer. It may not necessarily be in bulk. It may be a 300 rupee kind of purchase, 400 rupee kind of purchase also.
Okay. A quick follow-up to it. So do you see the same categories which you guys are selling, FMCG companies are selling work on e-commerce, or new categories need to be invented for it?
It's both ways. Like our existing product range also we should be selling on D2C. Apart from that, companies are introducing certain products which are only available on D2C and they may not be available in the general trade.
That's answer.
Can we? Okay.
So I had a question actually. I think Anirudh, you mentioned now, like you were talking about the customers from the Northeast. You know, they have a lot of.
Yeah.
I'm audible.
Oh, hi. Yeah.
Hi.
I couldn't see you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm Dhrubil.
It's not you. It's the lights in my.
It's
eyes.
fine.
You're fine.
So yeah, no, I just wanted to check your insights on, you know, you guys were talking about the customers from the Northeast, and you know, we have been recently, you know, exploring that market very diligently. But you know, like you mentioned, these are the customers who want products. They are fine with late deliveries also. RTO is less, returns are low, so it's a profitable business. And these customers have a lot of money also. But when you look the data from major e-commerces across the industry, the data suggests otherwise. You know, the most of the orders are coming from say metro cities. The highest dominant region is south. So do you have any insights on the northeastern region? You know, like, you know, how did you evaluate what kind of regions are more affluent? What is the, you know, go-to market strategies for e-commerce when it comes to northeast?
Can I just quickly answer this? Yeah. Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Kolkata, Baroda, those are the broad, large-scale markets any which ways, right? I mean, they've always been the markets. But that's because most of e-commerce was built on the back of that. So traditionally, what companies have done is they have built these extremely large consumer data pools. Those same data pools go back into Facebook. That's the same lookalike audience that gets built. It's the same interest cohort that gets run. And that's what we are advertising to. So it's not a function of whether this was done by design. This is exactly what happened over the last period of whatever e-commerce growth we have seen. But there's an emerging market growth right now, right? And that emerging market growth for me is far more important because the CAC is lower. The ability to impress and expand that audience size is much higher. The potential of value growth is much higher there, right? So when you start to look at any emerging market, which is, in this case, we are talking about Northeast as a placeholder, for me, the ability of growth there is much higher as compared to Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, or wherever else we advertise, because it's that one audience size which is being advertised by everyone, right? So actually, you know, this is something I mentioned some time back. India does not have consumer depth. हमें लगता है कि बहुत बड़ी audience है नहीं है. We are potentially looking at about 2% of the overall population which does online transactions. Of that 2%, we are looking at probably 30-35% which do anything more than a 599. So when you look at it, it's an extremely small population. It's the same population across all these metros, which all brands are advertising to. Whereas a newer market, you have the ability to get higher scale, better volume, higher value, and potentially lower CAC as you go ahead. I think we can take like one more question. One more question, yeah.
Hi, this is
Although Rahul there has already raised his hand, so can we take two quickly? Can we do one and come back to Rahul? Yeah.
So here, I'll just stand up so that you can see me. Hi,
Yeah.
I'm Apurv. So I'm from Domino's, competition to Manish. So I'll ask Manish. Manish, please feel free not to answer if you.
I'm an ex-jubilant.
He's ex-jubilant, so that's okay.
Yes. Yeah, I know he's ex-jubilant, so that's why I'm saying that please feel free not to answer. But you talked about that transition from TV to digital, and so digital was not working. You again went back to TV. And then you're saying that, in which I also agree, that ours is an impulse purchase category. So it is easier to catch hold of consumer in the moment of truth when they want to order through digital rather than through TV. So that is where we feel that probably we will over-index more on digital. So having said that, how do you marry the two? Like catching them in the journey of placing the order through, say, mass media, and more in the context of your last campaign, the big ticket campaign when you took SAF, big celebrity. So what was the intention behind that campaign? Was it particularly to target tier 2, tier 3 to create awareness for your brand? Or if that was not the objective, or if it achieved your objective? So
Okay.
please feel free if you do not want to answer. Yeah.
No, I'll answer. And quite a few of those questions over there. So let me just re-articulate if I have got the questions right. One was on the last campaign and the intent and strategy. Second was in if moment of truth it is easier to capture in digital, then how do you look at TV playing that role, right? So in our case, what we have seen is, and having worked both the brands for good 4 years plus, I'll say both brands have very different DNAs. Domino's built the delivery credentials in India when no one else was delivering. There was no aggregator, nothing. Domino's built the promise and built that messaging home that you will allow a stranger to come to your home. That was a big promise. In those times, people were not willing to look at a stranger knocking at their door, right? So Domino's established that. While Pizza Hut always had the dine-in legacy. People went to Pizza Hut to celebrate their dine-in occasions, right? Even today, if I go to consumers, if in this group I'll ask, what is their last memory of Pizza Hut? I am sure 50% of them will say, I celebrated my birthday when I used to be kid, or I used to take my spouse for the dating time and all that. So it is always linked with the memory structure of the role the brand played was very different versus functional. It will definitely come on time. My maid has not turned up. So the drivers for the category or drivers for the users for both the brands are quite different. And hence, that being so top of mind on delivery occasions was a hypothesis we took, may not be that relevant. While we are accessible on delivery channels, it is not necessarily that digital will play that part, and we can chat on separately that our thought and hypothesis on that was, now with emerging growth, Domino's had a long-term presence in large metros, right? You are 1700 plus restaurants. For us, it was important when we started expanding that we are not concentrating only on the top metros.
So two different models, two different moments of truth in some form, right? Rahul.
Yeah. Samriddh, what you spoke about tier 1 consumer and tier 2 consumer, I can seriously relate to it because since last 23 years, I am tier 1 consumer, but basically I'm a tier 2 consumer. I come from tier 2 background, okay? And whenever I visit my folks, I know exactly what you are saying. This is exactly what happens, okay? Now, I'll talk to you specifically about logistics, okay? It's just unreal to expect that logistics cost of reaching out to tier 2 consumer is going to be lower. It's just unreal, right? You can sit across the table and bully the service provider, but fact of the matter is, it's a physical movement and it would take its own course, right? It would have its own cost implication. Do you think while that particular market is being developed, the mistake that was done deliberately or by design or by default, whatever it was, in creating market in tier 1 geographies, I think that mistake should not be repeated when you are developing the tier 2 market, because their consumer, as you rightly said, consumer is willing to wait for longer period. That is not a problem. They are willing to pay logistics cost. But if you start spoiling them from the beginning that no logistics cost, then obviously you will have to sit across the table with the logistics provider and negotiate, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Stop wasting money.
Sorry?
Stop wasting others' money.
Okay.
Most of this gets funded through VC money.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you have to take a very strong capital responsibility stance and say, hey, I'm not going to spoil them by giving them free logistics. I'm going to charge them for it. I'm potentially going to reduce my sort of COD.
Absolutely.
So some of the things that we have done is we have ensured that certain PIN codes, we just don't have any COD. Right? So it just absolutely makes no sense to have COD. The kind of addresses that one ends up getting is people ke ped ke niche ek lal building hai, uske side mein rakh dena.
Absolutely.
Right? So
yeah.
that doesn't make sense, right? You cannot deliver. So I think the reality is this, right, Rahul? One, tier 2, tier 3, whatever you call it, is, and across India, logistics is dependent on two factors. One is the accuracy of the address that you get, and second is the penetration of whosoever your partner is to be able to deliver to that, right? Yeah. The third piece, which is super important, is the intent of the guy who's delivering it. You might have a fantastic partner, but the person who's actually delivering it last mile, agar uska intent nahi hai, to deliver kabhi nahi hoga.
Completely agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have to make your business more oriented towards, one, being able to take that risk. Second is removing all these risk indicators. I am a big believer of removing risk rather than handling risk. So fundamentally those same things, right? Remove COD from PIN codes. Make sure that you're charging them upfront. Try to make a certain degree of transparency to this entire idea of when it will be delivered.
Correct.
Right? So I don't think logistics has been solved. India is a deeply complex market where logistics cannot be solved.
Correct.
So if we assume that there is anyone, and listen, I have great respect for all the logistics partners. We work with a bunch of them, but the fact is that it's still a broken model and will remain a broken model no matter what happens because it's human dependent.
Anyone who says we have solved this problem is lying. You're right.
I mean, yeah,
No, you're right.
More power to them for saying it, but I don't believe it.
No, agree, completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just add one thing on COD aspect is it's also directly correlated with the trust you have on the brand. All my Amazon orders are prepaid. Any new brand that I discover through Instagram, I do COD. Because I don't know whether they will turn up, whether they will turn up right, whether the product will be good or not. If it is a repeat purchase, I may do prepaid. But any new discovery brand, I may not do prepaid. So it's also about the trust that you build with your promise that you have given. Is it right? Then consumer will start doing COD, prepaid orders.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
All right, folks, thank you so much. We're going to take this offline. Do we have time for a quick one? No, we don't.
We're out of
Can
time.
we take
We'll
this
take
offline?
questions offline.
We'll catch up on the sites.
Yeah. So just we're here for the next.
Thank you so much
full
for
days.
active participation.
Thank you so much, and yeah, have a good time.
Thoroughly enjoyed.
We have a lovely token of appreciation from Assembly, so I request Shiny to present that to all our speakers on the stage. Yes, starting with Samriddh. All right, please. All right. So to all the three of them, to Samriddh, Mr. Jain, and Mr. Manish as well. And could you please come forward for a group photograph, please? Could you come forward for a group photograph? Well, thank you so much for that insightful panel discussion. That was our first panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen. I absolutely lovely insights then. I'm sure you would